Welcome, everyone. My name is Eric with Fast Slow Motion. I'm joined today by Hillary Elmore, one of our project leaders here at FSM, and Amy Jackson, the Director of Project Management with Blue River PetCare. Amy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Amy, tell us about Blue River PetCare.
Blue River PetCare was founded in 2009, and we have our headquarters in Chicago. We were founded under the principle that being good veterinary businesses could also be good business. And so the veterinary space, when someone is looking to sell their practice and retire, the old model was you have someone who grew up in your town, worked for your practice, they go off and become a veterinarian, come back and work for you, you sell them your practice and you retire. And that model has changed a lot over the last 10 to 15 years as people have moved away from those smaller towns toward the big cities, and people started to invest more money in their animals. Animals have become family. And so when you think about the cost of purchasing a veterinary practice when they are a very sizable business, that can sometimes be cost prohibitive for someone, especially combined with the cost of tuition for veterinary school. And so that has opened up a bit of an opportunity for someone like Blue River PetCare to work with a selling owner to take that practice that they've built. And our business philosophy is to keep the legacy that they built. So whatever protocols they put in place, whatever staff they have in place, whatever it is that they've done that makes them unique and anchored in their community, we preserve that. And so when they become part of the Blue River family, we are really helping to support the back-end operation. So things like helping with payroll, accounts payable, bill pay, recruiting. And so all of those tasks kind of get taken off of the plate of the selling owner / medical director to allow them to focus on what they do best, which is practice veterinary medicine and take care of those pets. And so that has been our philosophy from day one. And here we are into 2023. We've gone from one practice to nearly 190 practices across the United States in over 35 states. And so we have, I've been here since day one, essentially. I was one of the very, very first employees. So to have been here as the company has grown through this tremendous growth over the last, 11 years on my part, has been a really exciting journey.
I'm sure it's been quite a ride. Well, we met you in 2020. What was going on at Blue River at that time that caused you to kind of reach out and ask us for help?
No, so in 2020, we had just hit 100 practices in our network, and we were at the size where we really had to stop and take a minute and think about how are we going to continue to provide the same level of service to these practices when we had 300 practices and 400 practices, down the road, as we continue to be able to offer that opportunity to future selling veterinarians. And we really had to stop and look at how can we work smarter and not harder? How can we really continue to be efficient with what our programs are offering in terms of being able to interact and provide services and benefits to these practices? But how can we make good business decisions? How can we really take individual data from all of these practices who really have, a very singular approach, and that we don't come in and dictate that they're going to do X, Y, Z, so that we have, one single economy of scale. And so when we first started talking with FSM, it was to find a place to start. It was to say, here's where we know we've got to be, here's what we've got, where's the best place to start, how can we really begin this conversation to put our company in that direction. And so it really started with, what I really come to love about FSM, which is the crawl, walk, run approach. Crawl, walk, run, my favorite. And that was really the don't try to do everything on day one. And so our first wave, we really were looking at data collection. We really needed to know, hey, we just need a place to put this information that everyone can access it as appropriate, and that we can then begin to get some meaningful data from that information. And over the years, that's turned into that initial process in 2020, becoming a fully automated process with business approvals being routed through, with communication channels being automatically triggered, and predictive reporting and analytics are kind of the next step in the future there. So that was kind of what got us here. And that continues to be a good baseline where different projects that kind of come into the fold as different teams that are at different starting places.
And Hillary, I believe you've been working with Amy and the team over at Blue River since they came and found us in 2020. Tell us about the project. How did we approach it, and kind of what are some things that stand out to you?
Yeah, so Blue River was actually one of my first kind of flying solo projects with Fast Flow Motion. So it was definitely a learning process, I think, for all of us. But what really sticks out to me that came out of that was a process by which Blue River PetCare could collect from the different practices kind of their wish list items, their capital expenditure items, and be able to really budget for those, report on those, understand, who is asking for what. Previously, Amy had done a lot of legwork on that with a SurveyMonkey survey and putting it into an Excel spreadsheet. And Amy was doing a ton of work on this, but to her point about expanding the organization as a whole, it just wasn't going to be sustainable long term. And this was a good chunk to pull out and say, okay, this we can definitely automate. We can make this smoother for the practices, for the internal Blue River employees, and also, of course, for Amy. So that's really where we started. And I know that we've gone through a couple of iterations on that, but it's still, the way that they're doing that right now.
Amy, I don't know if you had done any sort of software implementation projects before, but what was your impression of working with Hillary and the team?
So this is not my first software implementation rodeo, and so we were actually brought to FSM because our initial Salesforce employment, the initial Salesforce deployment did not go well, and so we approached FSM to say, hey, we have Salesforce now, but the team that we were referred to by Salesforce didn't do what they needed to do. And that was really where we realized how much we didn't know and what questions to ask. And so we really kind of took the approach of, we were expecting, for an implementation partner for a brand new software platform to be coming from Salesforce and saying, they're going to give us some guidance on best practices. They're going to help us think about data structure and integrity. And instead it was, here's a spreadsheet, tell us what fields to make. And so even with my own background in other software implementations, other CRM programs, I was better than most, but it was still one of those moments that coming in and realizing, because we've done things this way, we've lost out on the ability to leverage XYZ within the Salesforce. And so we came to FSM kind of having been burned in that opportunity, and that was in 2019. So we'd gone through almost 6 to 9 months with our first round of data and custom development in terms of objects to realize that we kind of had to start over in the sense of really, we didn't recreate what we'd already put in, but we definitely had to stop and take a look and say, before we do something, what's the big picture here? What is the conversation? What's the end goal with the information? And those kind of conversations really shifted the trajectory for us in terms of success inside Salesforce. And so it was, once we had answered the larger questions, then we were able to work backwards and go, okay, so that first ramp up was 4 or 5 smaller projects where it would very much be, we need to build some comfort level back into what Salesforce can do. And here's how we can kind of prove that to you. So that was kind of a test both ways of, there was a lot of deliverables on my end of, weekly turnarounds in terms of data. There was like a nonstop mad fury sprint going on in those 4 weeks. But that was an opportunity to go, okay, everybody feels good about Salesforce again. And how can we really take this knowledge that we've learned and pivot that forward and say, that this has been something that's helped us move there. So compared to other software implementations I've been part of it org-wide, switch, we were moving from something into a associate management platform that wasn't Salesforce, but that was a 26-month transition. So in that space, very regimented, hundreds of hours being dedicated to SOP development, but that was very much also, we had a bank of hours. And so every single meeting was, okay, we have to make a request to the developer, we have 20 hours, now we have 17 hours, and now we have 13 hours. And it it was a difficult place to be sitting because you want what needs to be done. You need something that's going to work. And if it came down to, well, we ran out of budget hours, you're still not left in a place where you've got to work the product to go live eventually. So that's something that's been nice in this case is we've had those discussions kind of ahead of time, and we've been able to build a little bit better budgeting more in a scope of work approach at the beginning to be able to say, hey, here's what we need, here's what we think, with a little bit of room to be able to say, okay, this is what gets the job done the way it should be done. And I think that was just a huge mental shift in terms of we've done a good job, and that's where I think the requirements come in and the upfront conversations to feel good about a quote that we receive. That there's going to be something there that says we've done the work, barring unseen, Salesforce does something and now there's an update that throws everything we've done out the window. There's the ability to say, okay, we can actually make business decisions based on the discussions and the proposals that we're receiving in terms of potential scope of work hours. And that's maybe the biggest shift for me in a positive way compared to previous implementations that were much more rigid.
And Hillary, just to stay there for a moment, that is something that differentiates us a bit in the partner ecosystem, is that we do not bill time and materials. Kind of unpack why our approach is a better approach for clients that we're dealing with situations similar to Amy's.
Yeah, the flexibility just gives us the opportunity to really listen to what's going on with our clients and with the business and take a broader perspective and make sure that we're actually, implementing the right thing, working on the right thing at the right time, as opposed to sticking to a sort of set, defined scope of work where it's like, no, this is what we agreed to and everything else is out of scope. For us, essentially anything that is within the hours is going to be within scope. And that, I think, gives us a lot of freedom to say yes, and it gives clients a lot of freedom to come in and really ask for what they need in the moment. We can pivot pretty quickly and make sure that we're really meeting the needs, which is in client services, that's really what we want to do.
And so, Amy, it sounds like we've got you to a good place with your Salesforce implementation now. I understand you guys are now focusing this year on adopting Salesforce across even more departments. Kind of tell me what the future holds for the near term for Blue River.
For the near future, it really is about taking the champions that we've had within some respective departments who have really embraced what Salesforce can do for their respective teams. And we're doing everything from case management to, the automating process that we're talking about, relationship with DocuSign and the community portal, and being able to kind of showcase what each one of those features is able to bring to that department. And really with that department spearhead, championing what's going through, instead of it being me as a Salesforce administrator being the one executing and pushing the organization through. It's really growth from the ground up. And so that's kind of really where we're at, is that internal education process and helping to define business process. Because that's for us kind of been the first step that we've experienced, is that it's difficult when you have such an open infrastructure like Salesforce to be able to figure out what it is you need unless you've actually kind of spent the time to do basic documentation or just process review and say, what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to improve something? Are we trying to build reports? Are we trying to open chains of communication? Because once you set up those priorities, then it makes it a little bit easier for the next step to just kind of fall into place. And so that's been something that as we continue to grow as an organization and different teams have come into the picture, they're at different stages of those conversations. And that's really been something that's kind of exciting, is to be able to have touched on so many different areas within Salesforce so far, even in just the very short period that we've been here, and to see how unique and different it can be to each use case. And so that's really been, when we think about why we went with Salesforce versus a custom application, was really that flexibility to be able to say, I can use the case and I can tailor the case completely from top to bottom for every single department, but then the reporting end of it is cohesive. The reporting comes through to the report dashboard with the same level of information, validation and such features built in for data integrity. but it gives us the ability to have a win-win on both sides. We can meet the business need at the day-to-day level with those who are servicing our practice members, and we can also provide the business level insight that they need at the higher executive level to push business decision forward.
So we've tackled some pretty cool problems together. Got you guys set up. So there are a lot of other business leaders that may be in similar situations right now. Either they are unhappy with their CRM install, or they're seeing that they're not where they need to be able to scale to the goals that they have. What advice do you have for those business leaders?
I would really invite them to be open to the possibility of what the future can hold, and that it may not look like what they do now. And I think if you're able to make that first step, then it becomes much easier to adopt whatever Salesforce can offer, because it is a different way of presenting information. It is a different way of functioning. And so when you think about working in a very transparent way, you really have to think about the quality of the information going in. And so that means that everything from your business process, because you've really got to say, we want a single source of truth. And that is really something that FSM has really held us to, in the sense of just kind of that awareness that when you build something, you really have to think about every other piece involved. And so it can't just be a one-off piece, but you really have to think about the business unit as a whole, if it's going to truly be sustainable in the long term. Because as we discovered, one business unit might have done A, the next business is coming in and doing something different with the same information, but they want to call it their version of what they call it. But now, from a reporting perspective, how do we know which one's the real data? And so that was something that we struggled through initially at the beginning. So to be able to say, okay, if this is an approach that you're going to take, having some sort of unification of information goals across the organization, and even just that relational information of who does what and how does it affect other teams, because that will be immediately evident as soon as you start getting inside a Salesforce environment and you ask the question of what is the single source of truth for this information, and have to rectify within your organization what that might look.
And Hillary, we bake that into our process as we're building out these solutions for people like Amy and the folks over at Blue River. Talk a little bit about our methodology, our agile approach, and kind of how it's the optimal way to approach projects like this.
Yeah, so it really does. It really does depend on the client being available and being willing to get their hands a little bit dirty. There is a little bit of homework, and it is important that whoever is on the calls and whoever is reviewing the things that we've provided over the course of the week is involved in the process from a business standpoint, and not just from a sort of IT testing solution process. It's kind of just week by week user acceptance testing, and just iterating on what we have so that we can end up with the optimal solution.
Amy, one of our guiding principles here at Fast Slow Motion is impact. We always love to be able to deliver positive impact to our clients. That impact is magnified in the case of Blue River, and the impact and service that you're bringing to communities across America through these veterinary practices. So thank you for sharing your story with us today. Where can people go online to learn more about Blue River PetCare?
They can find Blue River online at www.blueriverpetcare.com. We are also on all of the traditional social media platforms. We are on Facebook and LinkedIn especially. If you're someone who is a veterinarian looking for a great place to call home, and we've got a lot of great opportunities, feel free to check those out. Same if you are a selling owner who's thinking that this sounds like it might be a good fit for your practice upon retirement, we'd love to have a conversation.